fourth gear topped at 128 miles an hour, 150, 160 miles an hour. Man, just so stable, so smooth. It's almost unfair. And of course, you can only do that on the German Autobahn, legally speaking. Hey, Lawrence Ulrich here with The Drive, V Gates. We're here in Deutschland in Germany, a beautiful spring day with the Aston Martin DB11 AMR. You go to your hairstylist, you go to your barber, you get a little trim, you get a little touch-up. They don't do a lot, but you look so much better. It's the same with this Aston Martin DB11 AMR. They've touched up the steering, they've tweaked the handling, and the result is a car that looks very similar, but is greatly improved. As a British GT, this Aston is all about eating up the miles in great haste. 208 mile an hour top speed, and we're gonna put away a couple little hatchbacks on the Autobahn here. Man. Let's talk a little bit about what we don't like about the Aston, and it's all surrounding us right here. There's all this beautiful fragrant leather and tooled leather, and really love this new sport steering wheel, but this sad little Mercedes command screen. It looks like from a C-Class from a decade ago. And some of these metallicized little interior bits, the vent switches. Aston, this is just not fitting for a $250,000 car. If this has a great performance advantage in some ways over a Bentley Continental, namely probably a 900-pound advantage in a lighter curb weight, the Bentley's got it all over this car in terms of interior luxury. Hell, a Mercedes S-Class is more luxurious inside than this Aston, and it's not really even close. On the bright side is that 5.2-liter twin-turbo V12. The key idea with this Aston, kind of combining the improved handling that we really loved in the V8 model, but with the power and this glorious sound of this V12, which, by the way, just sounds insane. Just this big money burble, it's just beautiful. It really is hard to beat a V12 as far as that. Enjoy it while it lasts, because they might not be around for very much longer. Now you're looking at an engine that weighs 220 pounds more than the V8 model. So what do? They didn't change the steering ratio, but they did add a stiffer subframe bushing and a thicker front bar. And the idea is when you turn the car to kind of limit the roll in front and the way that affects the handling forces in back. Just a little bit more driver confidence. The back end stays a little more planted under all this power. You've got the various controls. You've got individual settings for the suspension, and then more settings for the powertrain. You've got GT Sport and Sport Plus, and with a wider range of operation now between the various modes. Throttle in Sport Plus is almost a little more aggressive than you might want for this kind of car, but you can always dial it back. Now, what is an AMR? Like everyone else, when we first heard about this, we thought, well, this is some kind of hopped up racy Aston. Maybe it's gonna have a giant wing on the back. Not so. AMR is going to denote the top of the range in various performance levels. There'll be a Vantage AMR as well. And so this is the V12 DB11, but booted up to 630 horsepower. And top speed rises from about 202 miles an hour to 208 miles an hour. The 0 to 60 mile an hour run drops to 3.5 seconds, down from 3.7, making this car just about as quick as the smaller Vantage. And a lot of subtle changes here. A blacked out grille, blacked out kind of hood scoops and the side strake. Big change is forged alloy wheels versus the cast alloys from before. That saves about 3.5 kilos at each wheel for a big reduction in unsprung weight and, of course, better response. Carbon fiber roof. The changes continue at the rear with a lot of blacked out bits, get a little more aggression going on. You've got that darkened exhaust and these kind of smoked tail lamp lenses. And that's matched by the dark black grille and dark headlamps as well. Okay, of course, this being an Aston Martin, all the bespoke options are like a key part of why you would kind of invest this money in this gentleman's GT. And that includes these very bright yellow things. This is the lime essence color that was kind of the launch color from the Vantage. And of course, that is definitely a matter of taste. I think it's a little much for this type of car, but again, it's all the beauty in the eye of the beholder. Now think about this car as kind of a stepladder of performance. Aston came out with the original DB11, great GT and a quantum leap over the DB9. Then they came out with the V8 and everyone was like, damn, this is better than the V12. Uh-oh, that's not necessarily a good thing when you're trying to sell a flagship V12. So what they've done with this car is to try to take all the handling gains and steering gains from the V8 and then mate that to the big V12 engine. So now you have this serious flagship with the sharpened steering and the sharpened responses of the V8, but with all the power of the V12. Of course, you're gonna pay for all that privilege, about $241,000 to start. Of course, we can talk about that V12 power, the steering, the Aston Martin heritage. What it really comes down to is this is a beautiful, beautiful car, exactly what we expect from Aston Martin. When you think about where Aston was even a decade ago in terms of performance, it makes this car that much more impressive. All the poor qualities that their cars used to display, the heavy dive under braking, kind of slow steering, just tons of body roll, all that's been tamed, and you've got a much flatter handling, more entertaining car that's still very comfortable and of course elegant. So why is this Aston called an AMR? It stands for Aston Martin Racing. The AMR reflects the highest performance in the DB11 range, but it's still a gentleman's GT. And it reflects a lot of the learning they've been doing at development centers all around the world, including here where Aston Martin Racing is headquartered at the Nürburgring. Been benchmarking everything, Porsches and Ferraris against the Vantage, Bentleys and Ferraris against this car. And the idea is to kind of take what they're learning in racing and apply it as much as they can to these production models. These are definitely not the Aston Martins of old.